Good evening. Welcome to our workshop agenda for October 10th, 2018. Roll call.
Mr. Dangler?
Here.
Mr. Vieira?
Here.
Dr. Vogt?
Here.
Dr. Selly?
Here.
Mrs. Wittes?
Here.
I hereby certify that this meeting has been published in the newspaper in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act and posted as required by law.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Standazuba to please come forward. Good evening.
I come before you tonight to ask you to take a look at possibly changing the bulk and the brush ordinance.
Stan, I'm sorry, is that button on there? There you go. Got it.
I'm sorry, I'll start again. Come before you tonight to possibly take a look at changing the brush and the bulk ordinance. Currently, I'll start with the bulk. We pick up the bulk every Wednesday during the entire year. 8 items, and it's getting overwhelming for us to maintain proper pickup. I have 7 crews that go out on Wednesdays. We do the entire town, and we really don't get everything done properly the way we want to do it. It's just overwhelming the amount of stuff that's out there between the mattresses and a lot of illegal dumping and just normal bulk that's on the road. What I would like to do is go to twice a month, the first and third week in the north zone and the second and fourth in the south zone. By doing that, I can cut back on a couple of the crews, number one, but I can concentrate on half the town at a time. I can get the machines out there that I need to do it. I can get the proper sweepers and everything in place and just really concentrate on the half the town at a time. I know it's going to take a lot to do this. I know we're going to have a lot of education. I also know that we're going to have to step up with code enforcement and work hand in hand with them to get this done. But we've looked at other towns. I can go over real fast for you. In Red Bank, for instance, they only do select days at their discretion. It doesn't actually say what day, and they only pick up 2 items. As far as Tinton Fall goes, they are the first and the third and the second and the fourth, as I am proposing, and they only pick up 4 items. Middletown is twice a month, and it's only 4 pieces. So we're still going to say we're going to pick up 8 items and try that. I mean, but if we have a 2-family house, which we have a lot of, sometimes some even more, that's 16 pieces that we're picking up at one stop. So it's really getting overwhelming with the manpower that we have, with the wear and tear on the equipment, and I know you guys want to do the best job we can. I want to do the best job I can for you to get this town cleaner than what it's been, and I think this would work. I've checked with my supervisors. It just didn't come from me riding around. I've talked to them hand in hand, and I really think it's an opportunity to try this. I don't want to do anything like this until after the first of the year so we can get the education out, but I'd just like to get your feelings and answer any questions you have as far as the bulk goes. As far as the brush goes, we're really getting killed with that as far as landscaping during the summertime. There's complete properties that are being cleaned and put out to the road. We're not even, a garbage truck will take it. It's a 30-yard container sometimes we have to go down and maintain. So I would like to go from March 15th to June 1st on that, and from September 15th to December 31st, January 1st, I should say, on that. But with that being said, both for the bulk and for the brush, I will give the opportunity to the regular citizens of Walbridge that live here with proper ID to dump bulk at the yard on Atlantic Avenue, and they can also call by appointment as long as they do the work. If I was going to do some work in my backyard during the summer months and not a landscaper, they could call for and make an appointment for us, and we would go pick it up within that week.
So Stan, like in the middle of the summer when you're not picking up brush, you say somebody, this tree fell down or something, they can call the town to get it picked up?
Absolutely. That's an emergency. We would automatically go do that the same way that we're doing now. We're not looking to cut that service at all. But the tipping fees are getting up every year, every month they're going up higher and higher. I mean, the cost savings that we get, as far as we can figure on the first year, isn't tremendous, but it is $25,000 to $27,000 in that
Okay.
range of what we're thinking as far
Yeah,
as
we-
picking up the brush. The
Okay.
bulk is probably going to level the same, but that would, help on some of our workman's comp cases with the guys that they're rushing really to try and get everything done in one day. And it'll help as far as the vehicles too. We can just slow the pace down. We can do a much better job for you, and that's why we're looking to do something like this. And again, this all comes back to code enforcement and making the citizens aware of what's going on. So we're going to do a pretty good job on education before we really start this.
Well, if we go to twice a month on half the town and twice a month on the other half,
Yes, sir.
it sounds like we still would be ahead of what most of the other towns are doing.
Yes, correct. That's why I wanted to look. I've talked to a few of the different directors in the other towns, and that's what we're doing. And also, it frees me up a couple crews to take care of the parking lots that we want to do, so do some other maintenance around and everything like that with the amount of crew that we have right now.
Okay.
I just think we can do a much better job that way. It's going to take some getting used to, but I think we should, consider giving it a shot.
But we would definitely have to enforce it because they'll still throw it out no matter what. So if we have to stay on top of the enforcement.
Absolutely.
That's the
Absolutely.
number one priority because
You know,
I've passed places that you pick up rubbish and on one side of the street, the next day it's on the other side of the street.
yes,
so-
last week we went on bulk day and we picked up everything. We did the entire town and we had 37 stops the following day that people
Okay.
called in, stuff like that. We had to go pick up. That got put out after the bulk on Wednesday night, so we definitely have to do that.
Are you going to put cameras up in certain areas to
Yes, we're gonna
monitor?
put cameras up. We already have some cameras up. I have Mr. Baldanza looking into a possible grant to get some cameras to put up, and we're going to try and do that. Right now, we just have like trail cameras. They're just photos, but we actually had, and we're trying to look into it now, we had illegal dumping right at the Public Works Yard Sunday at 6 o'clock at night. A car pulled in and dumped the 3 5-gallon containers of paint and some other stuff out of the back of his car. So we're reviewing the tape now to try and get a license plate back. So it even happens there, they can just drive there. And the other day on a Saturday, one of my guys was riding by the Reclamation Center on Atlantic Avenue, and he sees a van there, and the van's unloading the back of the truck in front of the gate. So there's some issues that we have to address.
So you feel that by us doing this, it's going to eliminate some of the dumping from other towns?
Yes,
And also the wear and tear on our vehicles and, that we're experiencing right now because you're constantly having to pick up. So I think it's a great idea.
I would really like to give it a shot. I think we can always revert back to what we did. If it doesn't work, I mean, we don't know, but we won't know unless trying it. I think.
And the other thing too is, as a community, we need to be aware of people dumping and to report it if we see it and,
Correct.
all work together because we all want our town to be clean.
Correct.
Thank you.
Well, that would come under the education that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, actually, we're starting on Saturday during Long Branch Day. I have a table. I spent some money and bought some magnets, and we have a lot of handouts for the refrigerator on what days everything gets picked up, what you can put out. Actually, they're in the mayor's office, all different things. You guys would like to see them afterwards. It has a complete list. We just took it off our website, and I thought the magnet for a refrigerator would be a good idea because we get a lot of phone calls and stuff like that from people. So we're going to hand them out, and we're going to have a little public education starting on Saturday. I got a couple people working, and we're going to start from there.
So when do you plan for this to start to take effect? In the beginning of the year or?
After the first of the year.
Okay.
Yes, I don't have an exact date. It could be January 1st, it could be a little bit later, but as soon as we possibly can. But I want to make sure that we get the education out there, get it on social media, not only social media, but maybe do some type of mailing or something on a tax bill or something like that, or just get something out to people, because there are still a lot of people that call us. We're going to bring back the city calendar. A lot of people call us that don't use the internet, so we want to get it out to them also.
What is the dumping fine now if we catch somebody?
I don't know. That's code enforcement, sir. I don't have an answer for that.
Speaking of code enforcement, currently a police officer is code enforcement, am I correct
I
in that?
believe 2 Class 2 police officers, yes. And Mr. Hayes.
Why wouldn't they come under you?
They've always been back there. I do not have that answer for you.
I'm not
No.
putting you on the spotlight. It's just, I guess that was a quick question that just
Right.
came out. I mean, because you're picking up and you guys are going around seeing what's going on, so why wouldn't the code enforcement person be under you? Actually, why is a police officer when he could be serving the city in other ways? So, I guess that's just a question.
I think that's one thing we gotta look into, because probably better off working out of your office or something instead of communicating from your office to this office, and that's something we probably gotta look at.
Yeah, right now we do it by email. A call will come in from our crew on this road to the girls in the office, and then the secretaries will email over to code enforcement, and then we'll wait for a reply.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
Stan, my only thought in this is that we've got to get the word out to the public.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you can do it any different than what we're doing, but we've got to bombard the citizens with the changes that we're making.
Right.
I mean, this week is a perfect example. If you and I both know, we rode around the town, and what happened? There was no bulk this week, but everybody put it out anyway.
Just spoke to the mayor on that, and I'm actually going to put crews out tomorrow.
Not your
I have no
fault,
choice.
but
I
the
don't-
citizens
I
should
don't-
realize that there are certain times that you do and certain times you don't.
Yes, yeah.
But they all should be given warnings as well.
Huh?
If their bulk is out on a day it should not be out, then warnings should be given out to
Yes,
them.
that's true.
So,
So Stan, I think your work is to be commended on a few different levels. First of all, you know, we all said, and you know from the campaign days, the cleanliness of the city has been a priority for everybody. So for you to step up in terms of what your piece of the pie is all about with an initiative, that's the kind of partnership we need throughout all of the departments. I think the other thing is, you know, and I think we all experience, I can tell you I experience it not where I work, when people are asked to do more or provide more service, the first thing that is said is, sure, give me more staff, you know? And I think what you did here was to kind of look at how you're doing work and how can we do it differently, basically within the same budget allocation, and how can we provide better service. So I think that's a great model to set forward. And I would just support really the two things that I think you heard from everybody here. One is education, because this is going to, it's easy for people to perceive this as a cutback in service, not a way to provide better service.
Correct.
So that's going to be a challenge, getting that correct message out. And I think I'm looking really to the council and the administration here, because these, you know, each department has their own little slice of authority. And particularly with code enforcement, but also, you know, with education, it needs to be that team effort within, you know, among all of the departments. And however that happens, that we can encourage that, that the team needs to be there. I think Billy started some good thinking with, you know, it's an interesting question that the police would be assigned to this, and is that the best way to do it? I don't know the answer. I just think it's an interesting question. But my point is, it's much, much broader than just your area, and I think you're to be commended for kind of putting a very good model out there.
Stan, I want to say you're doing a great job, too. The question I have is, how do you think you would measure the results? Like, in other words, if there was a time frame by which you would see if this new program is working,
Honestly, Mayor, I think just visually by riding around town and seeing what's left on the road. I mean, you know, you drive around, we're seeing all the time, we're talking about it constantly, and the amount of illegal dumping and the amount of regular bulk that's out there is crazy. And again, if it's not working, then we're going to have the same amount. If it is working, then we should be very pleased with the results. And people are going to have to understand that when you live north, it's the first and the third, and when you live south, it's the second and the fourth, and they're going to need, you know, either the first time they put it out, you know, and notice a violation or something like that, you cannot do it here, we will do it, or you can bring it to, even though, as I said before, we're going to the twice a month, they're still more than welcome to drop it off, as long as they don't have commercial plates, because commercial plates, we don't, you know, that's another thing, that they could come to recycling center on Atlantic Avenue and drop it off in the back. And other than that, I mean, I just will see by when my guys come in at the end of the day, the level of what they look like, because they're pretty beat up right now, going out on Wednesdays and working the entire day on bulk and then coming back, you know, and we should also notice an improvement on the equipment, I believe, too, because we're not running around all over the place, not just throwing stuff in and going to the next stop. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen them out there. It's a rat race when they're out there trying to get it done. I mean, and I truly, once again, really think it's worth the shot. If it doesn't work, we can always go back to what we did. But I'm pretty
Or
confident.
try something else.
Pretty confident, or try something else, exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty confident we might have a shot.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, go
Excuse
ahead.
me, Stan, one point in the proposed ordinance,
Yeah.
I know we had discussed what happens when there's a holiday on a Monday, so that we don't have neighborhoods with just one pickup per month?
Yes, we're gonna go out and pick it up.
Okay.
We're not gonna do the holiday thing anymore. If there's a holiday on your pickup day, we will arrange somehow one day that week, I don't know exactly when it is, but we will put a couple crews out there. It won't be the full crew, but we'll put a couple crews out there to go out there and take care of the bulk. Because honestly, the holiday is not working. When we lose a holiday or something, and this is a prime example of what we got on the road as I rode around today and looked at it. I mean, I'm going out tomorrow with a crew to pick it up because it just can't stay out there.
That needs to be reflected in the ordinance as well.
Okay, I'll take care of it. Yeah, this was, sorry, this was just more or less, thing, but I'll make sure we get it in there before we do that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks, Stan.
Thank you.
If I could add something to that, Mayor. Speaking about measurable, we have our bid going out for bulky waste, and that's based on an estimated quantity to stand and pick up. So once we get some numbers in after the program starts, we should be able to save money because the bid is based on an estimate that we send out for them to bid on. So that'll be another way for us to measure, you know, how well we're doing, because hopefully the bulky waste that we're picking up should go down. That'll hopefully save us some money.
Great.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Anything for Stephen?
Thank you.
And next, we're going to discuss the abandoned property ordinance. Mr. Renaud?
Yes, Council President. As you know, I took an initial shot at drafting the abandoned properties ordinance, which I circulated to council probably more than a month ago. And I believe members of the council also had some conversations with DCA's planning department, who were kind enough to give us some input as to what the form of those ordinances should look like. One of their recommendations is that we try to take a look at how Trenton did it. So it just so happens, it's just coincidental that the director of law for the city of Trenton, who wrote those ordinances, is now a partner in my law firm, so Walt Denson. So I had Walt go back and take a look at it and kind of restructure the ordinance, the one ordinance into three ordinances, which I've now circulated to council today so they can see it. We also got some comments in from staff, and tried to incorporate them into these ordinances. My only suggestion is that I would like to have Mr. Jackson take a look at them and then, just vet them one more time with staff to make sure everybody's on the same page. But they are essentially ready to go for your next council meeting for introduction.
That's good.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Lou, for the sake of the audience and those who might be watching, can you explain the three ordinances in simple terms? Sure. And the advantages that we have by doing this specifically?
Sure. So essentially what we're doing is that there's three different aspects to it. The first is to establish a list of abandoned properties that are truly abandoned. And by abandoned, I mean not vacant, but abandoned. That there are properties that we can't find a responsible party for them. The best example is you have a property it was in somebody's name. That person dies. There's 10 people in the estate. They're in Pennsylvania. They don't want anything to do with the property, and they may or may not be paying the taxes, but certainly they're not maintaining it. It would allow us to put them on notice and establish a registry of abandoned properties, and then ultimately, allow the city to go in and to remediate those properties, if necessary, to force the sale of those properties to get them rehabilitated. That's for truly abandoned properties. The next is to require the registration of vacant properties, and those are properties that we can identify an owner, but the properties are these are properties that are vacant, they're not maintained. It allows us to create a registry it generates funds by charging fees to create the registry. It also allows us to start to monitor and to force the once again the cleanup of those properties. It's becomes then a property maintenance issue. And finally, there's properties that are as we know that are in foreclosure, and the third ordinance is an ordinance that's really directed at the foreclosing, the banks that are foreclosing on these properties, to force them to maintain these properties while they're going through the foreclosure process. The whole purpose of this is to, some of this is to develop information that would allow you to literally see where you have a street that has a problem, where you have vacant properties or abandoned properties on it, and allow you to concentrate code enforcement and the like on those streets to, keep and maintain them. So it just provides a variety of tools, Mayor, to staff to, as I said, identify and then ultimately force into compliance these properties.
To me, there were a couple interesting things in there that I think are quite different. For example, property owners required to put something in the window, correct?
Correct.
That identify who the owner is,
Correct.
a contact number and so forth. So,
Correct.
Which has often been the case when I was on the council, where you would have, a neighbor would report something that have no information by which to go on.
Correct.
Where then the code enforcement would have to spend, a lot of time just sort of locating who the person is, right?
Right.
So I mean, that kind of just, that registration process
Sure.
just helps everybody and makes things more efficient.
Correct.
Right? And then the other thing was can you just talk about the out-of-state creditors and how this would address the companies that own this, take it over, who are out of state, and how we would impose significant daily fines on them if
Correct.
they don't. Would
Correct.
you just
Well,
mention that?
that's the other part of it, and Mayor, and DCA probably was very helpful in terms of advising as to the various strategies that are used. But one of them is to require the registration of these properties and to step up the fines for people who are truly not local, and we don't have the ability to get somebody on the phone to come down and fix something if there's a broken window or if those kind of things. It is a matter of forcing out-of-state creditors, which was more and more what we're seeing, because mortgages are sold to, they're sold in bulk and they're held by banks in different states, to force them to have somebody responsible to us to maintain these properties, or to pay the fines that allow us to now generate the income necessary for us to maintain these properties. And then, of course, whenever we do that, we put liens on properties and make sure we ultimately collect those fines back, and it becomes almost like a revolving fund.
Mm-hmm. And I know you've had a lot of experiences. Can you talk about by adopting these ordinances and resolutions, it enables us to do this a lot quicker and more efficiently than we would otherwise be able to do, which I guess is the reason it was established in the first place by the state.
Correct. And, I was involved pretty heavily with Newark's program, where, obviously Newark has a lot more properties because they have a lot more line items, but it allowed them to establish a registry, and then what they literally could see is they could see clusters, and they could work kind of block to block to try to resolve these issues, because what they have found over time is that these things tend to spread. If you have one, I know we're throwing up their hands because they had no tools at all other than their property maintenance, which what ultimately would happen with the property maintenance was they'd pay somebody to shore up a porch or mow the lawn. They'd put a lien on the property, and then that would be it. And then 6 months later, they'd be out there having to cut the grass and do all of those things and fix it again. And they'd put a lien, and they never got to ultimately, it was a much more cumbersome process to then enforce that lien because it was a tax lien and it took 2 years for it to get foreclosed. It just, the process became so long. This is a, you know, a relatively quick process when you identify a property that is a troubled property. You can go from, you know, beginning to get a remediation of it relatively quickly.
And how do we develop the list? Like, how does that occur?
Well, you have different ways to do it. One is it's an enforcement thing. You identify properties and start identifying, you know, who the last property owner is. You send notices to people. You now have an ordinance that requires people to register these properties, and if they don't, then you have substantial fines that you can levy. It generates compliance that way.
Thank you.
And I want to pick up on that question and also the point that the mayor made with the bulk and brush, and that's how we measure success. And, you know, now with this in place, could we also ask that we get periodic reports, maybe once every 6 months or whatever, to actually see, you know, how things are progressing? And I'm not sure who this falls on, you know, to do.
Correct.
But, you know, how are we progressing and where might the process be falling down? For example, now we're going to have the guidelines, but is it that the fines aren't being collected? Is it that this is, you know, how's the whole process working? So.
There are also, in Burlington City, I worked with a company that they really started out being a finance company, but they began to develop a product where literally the inspectors had apps on their phones.
Oh.
It was fascinating. And they had apps on their phones, and they could, while they were walking and they saw a house, they could press on it, they get all of the information about that property because it was registered. And it allowed, literally, you could see a map of, and you could see, you know, where all the blue dots were, you could see where they were coming. It's the way to do it. And then it allowed them to give, you know, like real-time reports to the administrator as to what properties were being done and what the condition was and whether or not there were open violations or not. So, you know, depending on when you go, you know, the extent of the problem, you really can, you know, this gives you all of the legal tools to do that, and then it's a question of enforcement.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because several of us have been in meetings, you know, to look at updating the website and
Sure.
you know, our whole reliance on technology. So to include that in the conversation, that would be wonderful.
It's just another layer on a GIS system
Yeah.
that you know, that you can have.
Anyone else? Okay. The next item is review of the regular meeting agenda. Is there any questions?
No question.
No question.
Okay. So at this time, at this time, I'd like to have a motion to go into closed executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Dangler?
Yes.
Mr. Viera?
Yes.
Dr. Vogt?
Yes.
Dr. Selly?
Yes.
Mrs. Wittes?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to know.
You're welcome.
Rose, you need to adopt a resolution to go into executive session for the items.
Oh, I have to say the others? Oh, sorry. We need to go into, have a motion to go into executive session for contract negotiations, Long Branch Partners, Update Pure Village, Carousel, and Sarah.
So moved.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make an amendment to my motion to go into executive session to discuss the items that you just presented before us.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dangler?
Yes.
Mr. Viera?
Yes.
Dr. Vogt?
Yes.
Dr. Selly?
Yes.
Mrs. Wittes?
Yes, thank you.